Imagine a city rising from the middle of a vast lake. White temples piercing the sky. Warriors dressed in jaguar skins marching through stone streets. And at the top of a towering pyramid, priests raising their hands toward the sun, believing that without blood, the world would end. This was not a myth. This was not a fantasy. This was the Aztec Empire. A civilization so powerful that it built one of the greatest cities on earth, and so feared that even its enemies trembled at the mention of its name. But how did a wandering tribe become the masters of central Mexico? And how did such a mighty empire collapse in just a few years? This is the rise of the Aztecs. Long before European ships appeared on the horizon, the Valley of Mexico was already home to powerful city-states. But the people who would later be known as the Aztecs were not powerful at all in the beginning. They were migrants. According to their own legends, they came from a mysterious homeland called Aztlan. No one knows exactly where it was. Some believe it was a real place in northern Mexico. Others believe it was symbolic. But what matters is this: the Aztecs believed they were chosen by their god to leave Aztlan and search for a new home. For years, they wandered. They were not welcomed. Other city-states saw them as outsiders, barbarians, mercenaries. They were forced to survive by hiring themselves as warriors. But the Aztecs were patient. Their god, Huitzilopochtli, had given them a sign. They were told to settle where they saw an eagle perched on a cactus devouring a snake. And one day, in the middle of Lake Texcoco, they saw it, an eagle on a cactus surrounded by water. Most people would have seen a swamp. The Aztecs saw destiny. In 1325, they founded their city there. They called it Tenochtitlan. At first, it seemed like a terrible choice. The land was marshy, unstable. But the Aztecs did something extraordinary. They engineered the lake. They built chinampas, artificial floating gardens made from mud and vegetation. These gardens were incredibly fertile and allowed them to grow massive amounts of food. Their system supported a population of over 200,000 people. That made Tenochtitlan one of the largest cities in the world, larger than most cities in Europe. The city was connected by massive causeways stretching across the lake. Canals ran through the streets. Markets bustled with thousands of traders every day. Spanish conquistadors would later describe the city as more magnificent than anything they had seen in Europe. But the Aztecs were not just builders, they were warriors. Through alliances and strategic warfare, they formed the Triple Alliance. Together with Texcoco and Tlacopan, they began conquering neighboring regions. This was the birth of the Aztec Empire. Conquered cities were forced to pay tribute, precious stones, warriors, exotic goods. But power in the Aztec world was deeply tied to religion. They believed the only way to keep the sun rising was sacrifice. To modern minds, this is shocking, but to the Aztecs, it was a sacred duty. Aztec society was highly structured. At the top was the emperor, known as the Tlatoani, the Great Speaker. Education was mandatory for children. Boys were trained in warfare. Girls were trained in religious duties. Laws were strict. They were not a chaotic civilization. They were organized, disciplined, strategic. For nearly a century, the Aztec Empire dominated. But by the early 1500s, tensions were rising. In 1519, strange ships appeared. Foreign men with pale skin, metal armor, weapons that thundered like storms, led by Hernán Cortés. At the time, the emperor was Moctezuma II. The balance of power shifted rapidly. Cortés did not defeat the Aztecs alone. He formed alliances with rival tribes who hated Aztec rule.
And then came disease. Smallpox spread through the population. The Aztecs had no immunity. Entire communities were devastated. Within just 2 years, the unthinkable happened. In 1521, Tenochtitlan fell. The great city that rose from a lake collapsed under siege, disease, and betrayal. The Spanish destroyed much of the city and built Mexico City on its ruins. But the Aztecs did not simply vanish. Their descendants still live in Mexico today. Their language, Nahuatl, is still spoken. They were engineers, farmers, astronomers, and their story is not just one of blood and conquest. It is a story of ambition, belief, and power, because even the greatest empires can fall. The truth about their sacrifice might surprise you. If you want to uncover the real stories behind history's greatest empires, stay with this channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next chapter.